How World War II created modern billionaires in 1939. The average American corporation was worth $2 million. By 1945, 6 years later, some were worth $200 million. That's a 100x increase, not from innovation, not from market competition, from war. World War II wasn't just the most destructive conflict in human history. It was the largest wealth transfer event ever recorded. And the men who positioned themselves correctly, who understood that war is the ultimate government spending program, became the richest individuals on Earth and built empires that control your life. Right now in 2025, this isn't about generals or politicians. This is about businessmen who turned 50 million deaths into personal fortunes. About corporations that profited from Holocaust labor, from atomic weapons, from every bullet, every plane, every tank. And here's what should terrify you. The wealth they accumulated, the corporate structures they built, the government relationships they established, they didn't disappear when the war ended. They became the foundation of modern capitalism. The billionaires controlling technology, defense, pharmaceuticals, finance, they're all descendants of the World War II profiteers, not morally, structurally. The system was designed during those 6 years. Cost plus contracts, military-industrial complex, government-guaranteed profits, corporate consolidation. All of it emerged from 1939 to 1945, and it never went away. It just evolved, expanded, embedded itself so deeply into the economy that you cannot separate modern wealth from World War II. Let me show you exactly how it happened. Who profited, what mechanisms they used, why the wealth never redistributed, and how the system they built during wartime became permanent peacetime policy. Because understanding World War II isn't just history, it's understanding why 3 men own more wealth than the bottom 50% of America, why defense contractors are guaranteed profits, why corporations pay lower tax rates than workers, why billionaires exist at all. The answer starts in 1939, when war became the most profitable business in human history. Before World War II, American industry operated under market principles. Companies competed, some succeeded, others failed. Profit came from efficiency, innovation, customer satisfaction. The government was a customer, not a partner. But when war started in Europe in September 1939, everything changed. Because war requires production at scales that markets cannot support. You need 10,000 tanks. You need them in 6 months. No private company can afford that risk. So government steps in with a mechanism that would reshape capitalism forever. Cost plus contract. Here's how it worked. Government approaches a corporation. We need aircraft, tanks, ships, ammunition. How much will it cost? The corporation calculates expenses, labor, materials, overhead, factory construction. They present a bid. Government adds 10% on top as guaranteed profit. The corporation cannot lose. Costs are covered, plus profit. No risk, just production. This mechanism, which sounds reasonable during emergency, had consequences nobody predicted, or maybe some people predicted exactly, because cost plus means the more you spend, the more you profit. And that's exactly what happened. Military procurement during World War II became the most wasteful, most profitable business in American history. And the corporations that secured these contracts, they became titans. Let's start with the company that profited more than any other. General Motors. In 1939, GM was already the largest car manufacturer in America, but cars were a competitive market. Thin margins, constant innovation required risk. GM's leadership, specifically CEO Charles Wilson, saw opportunity in war. Not patriotic opportunity, financial opportunity. When Roosevelt started expanding military production in 1940, even before America entered the war, GM converted entire factories to war production, cars to tanks, civilian trucks to military transports, engines to aircraft components, and they secured cost plus contracts for everything. GM produced $12 billion worth of military equipment during the war. That's $200 billion in today's money. Their profit margin was guaranteed at 10%. It's $20 billion in pure profit. No competition, no risk, just production and payment. But here's where it gets darker. GM didn't just produce for America. They produced for Nazi Germany. GM owned Opel, a German subsidiary. When war started, Opel factories kept running, producing trucks for the Wehrmacht. Vehicles that invaded Poland, France, the Soviet Union. GM's German operations built 50% of Nazi Germany's trucks. The company literally armed both sides. And after the war, GM filed for compensation. They claimed their German factories were damaged by Allied bombing. The US government paid them millions in reparations for factories that built equipment for the enemy. This wasn't treason. This was business. GM argued, correctly under law, that Opel was a separate entity. The parent company wasn't responsible for subsidiary actions. This legal fiction, the multinational corporation shielded by subsidiary structures, became standard practice. And GM walked away from World War II richer, more powerful, more consolidated than ever. Charles Wilson became Secretary of Defense in 1953. The executive who profited from arming both sides of World War II was put in charge of American military policy. When questioned about conflicts of interest, he gave the quote that defines the era: "What's good for General Motors is good for America." He wasn't joking. He genuinely believed it. Because the war had taught him that government and corporation aren't separate entities, they're partners. And profit is patriotism. GM's World War II windfall made it the dominant automaker for 50 years. The wealth accumulated during 6 years of guaranteed profits funded expansion, acquisitions, political influence. They became too big to fail. When they finally did fail in 2008, the government bailed them out. Why? Because the relationship established in 1940 never ended. GM and government were partners. Still are. Now let us look at the company that built the most famous weapon of the war and turned death into the most profitable industry on Earth, DuPont. Before World War II, DuPont was a chemical company. Plastics, fabrics, industrial materials. But they had explosive expertise dating back to World War I when World War II started. DuPont secured contracts to build munitions plants. Not just supply munitions, build the factories that would produce them. The government paid for construction. DuPont managed operations. Cost plus contracts on everything. And here's the innovation. DuPont negotiated contracts where they owned patents on any chemical processes developed during government-funded work. The government paid for research. DuPont kept the intellectual property. This was genius. Taxpayers funded innovation. Corporations owned the results. DuPont built the massive munitions plant in Indiana, Charlestown powder plant. Produced millions of pounds of explosives. All cost plus. It's all guaranteed profit. But that was just conventional weapons. The real money was in the Manhattan Project. In 1943, the US government launched a secret program to build an atomic bomb. The Manhattan Project required uranium enrichment, plutonium production, complex chemistry. DuPont was awarded the contract to build and operate the Hanford site in Washington. This facility would produce plutonium for the first atomic weapons. The contract was the most lucrative in history. The government paid for everything: land, construction, labor, materials. DuPont managed it, cost plus. Except this time, DuPont negotiated something unprecedented. After the war, they would retain rights to all non-military applications of atomic energy. Every civilian nuclear technology developed from Manhattan Project research, DuPont got the patents. The atomic bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki killed over 200,000 people. DuPont's profit from the plutonium production was $1. Symbolically, they claimed they built the bomb for patriotism, not profit. But the real profit came after. Nuclear power plants, medical isotopes, industrial applications. DuPont owned foundational patents. They made billions from technology taxpayers funded, and they never stopped. DuPont spun off subsidiaries, diversified into pharmaceuticals, materials, science, agriculture. Today, DuPont descendants include companies worth hundreds of billions. Corteva, Chemours, Dow DuPont, all trace their wealth to World War II contracts.
Ow!
2 cost plus arrangements. 2 intellectual properties seized from government-funded research. The DuPont family became one of the richest in America. Multiple billionaires. Political influence spanning decades. And it all started with chemical weapons in World War I and atomic weapons in World War II. Death, industrialized and monetized. That's the DuPont model, and it's still operating today. Now let us talk about the industry that didn't just profit from World War II, but was created by it. Aerospace. Before 1939, aircraft manufacturing was small-scale, experimental. The military bought some planes, but the market was tiny. Then came war. And suddenly, aircraft became the decisive weapon. Control the skies, win the war. Every nation needed thousands of planes. Boeing was a minor player in 1939. Small commercial aircraft, some military contracts. But CEO Philip Johnson understood what was coming. He lobbied the War Department aggressively. Got cost-plus contracts for B-17 bombers, the Flying Fortress. Production scaled impossibly fast. Boeing built 12,731 B-17s during the war, at $240,000 per plane. That's over $3 billion in revenue. $6 billion in today's money. All cost plus, all profit guaranteed. But Boeing wasn't alone. Lockheed built P-38 fighters. Douglas built transport planes. Each locked in multi-billion-dollar contracts. And here's the mechanism that changed everything. Factories required to build aircraft at wartime scales didn't exist. No government paid to build them. Massive facilities in California, Washington, Texas. Taxpayer money constructed the infrastructure, then handed it to corporations under long-term leases at minimal cost. This is the gift that keeps giving. The government built the factories. Corporations operated them at guaranteed profit during war. Then, after the war, they bought the factories for pennies on the dollar. Infrastructure worth billions, sold for millions. Why? Because the government wanted to maintain production capacity in case of future wars? So they gave sweetheart deals to Boeing, Lockheed, Douglas. Keep the factories. Keep production lines ready. We'll keep buying. This created the military-industrial complex, a permanent relationship where corporations exist primarily to serve military contracts. And because those contracts are guaranteed, because the government always needs defense equipment, these corporations cannot fail. Boeing today is one of the largest companies on Earth. They build commercial aircraft, but military contracts are still 40% of revenue. $30 billion per year from the Pentagon. Guaranteed. No competition, just contracts. And when Boeing has problems, when their aircraft crash, when production fails, what happens? Government doesn't punish them. Government gives more money, because Boeing and the Pentagon are partners. That partnership was formed in 1939. It's never ended. Lockheed Martin, descended from Lockheed, is the largest defense contractor on Earth. $60 billion in annual revenue, 90% from government. They don't compete in markets. They extract guaranteed payments from taxpayers. That business model was invented during World War II, and it's now permanent. Now let's talk about the man who profited most personally from World War II. Not a CEO, a financier. A banker who understood that war is debt and debt is profit. His name was Prescott Bush, grandfather of one president, great-grandfather of another, and the architect of a fortune that would dominate American politics for 70 years. Prescott Bush worked for Brown Brothers Harriman, one of the largest investment banks in America. During the 1930s, BBH financed German industry. They managed American investments in Nazi Germany, steel plants, chemical factories, railways. Even after war started in 1939, even after Germany invaded Poland, BBH continued operating. They managed the Union Banking Corporation, which directly financed Fritz Thyssen, Hitler's biggest industrial supporter. This continued until 1942, 3 years into the war. 1 year after Pearl Harbor, U.S. government finally seized UBC assets under the Trading with the Enemy Act. But here's the critical detail. They didn't prosecute. They froze the assets, held them during the war, then returned them after, with interest. Prescott Bush and his partners got their money back, plus compensation for being unable to use it during the war. The profit from financing Nazi Germany funded Prescott Bush's political career. He became a U.S. Senator in 1952. His son, George H.W. Bush, became CIA Director, then Vice President, then President. His grandson became President. 2 presidencies, multiple cabinet positions, intelligence leadership, all funded by World War II profiteering. The Bush family fortune, estimated at over $400 million, traces directly to those investments. 2 factories that used slave labor, 2 companies that built weapons for the Wehrmacht. And nobody talks about it, because the mechanism was legal. Investing in foreign companies wasn't treason, even when those companies armed America's enemies. This is the banking model refined during World War II. Finance both sides, profit regardless of outcome. The Rothschilds did it during Napoleon. Prescott Bush did it during Hitler. Modern investment banks do it today. War is risk for soldiers. War is profit for financiers. As long as you're far enough from the battlefield, death is just an externality in the profit equation. Now let us talk about the industrialist who used World War II to build a corporate empire that controls technology, media, and defense today. Howard Hughes. Hughes inherited a tool company from his father, oil drilling equipment. He was rich, but not super rich. Then World War II started. Hughes owned Hughes Aircraft. Before the war, it was tiny. Experimental designs, no major contracts, but Hughes had connections, Hollywood connections, political connections. He lobbied aggressively, convinced the War Department that his aircraft designs were revolutionary, secured contracts for reconnaissance planes, for bombers, for fighters. Most never reached production. The Hughes XF-11 crashed. The Hughes H for Hercules, the Spruce Goose, flew once. But Hughes didn't need successful aircraft. He needed contracts. Cost plus contracts. The government paid for research, development, prototypes, every cost covered, plus profit. The planes didn't have to work. They just had to be built or attempted. Hughes Aircraft received $40 million in contracts during the war. That's $800 million today. Almost none resulted in operational aircraft. But Hughes kept the money, kept the factories, kept the patents. After the war, Hughes Aircraft pivoted, became a defense contractor. Our radar systems, missiles, satellites. Every technology developed during government-funded World War II research became post-war product. Hughes Aircraft grew into one of the largest defense contractors in America. When Hughes died in 1976, the company was worth billions. It was eventually sold to General Motors, then to Raytheon. Today, pieces of Hughes Aircraft are embedded in Raytheon Technologies, Boeing, Lockheed Martin. Every major defense contractor has DNA from Hughes, and it all traces to World War II contracts for aircraft that never flew. Hughes personally became one of the richest men in America. It's $2.5 billion when he died. Adjusted for inflation, that's $11 billion today. All from government contracts. Some delivered, most didn't. Didn't matter, the money flowed anyway, because cost plus means you cannot lose. Now let us talk about the corporation that used World War II to create the blueprint for modern pharmaceutical monopolies, Merck. Before the war, Merck was a small pharmaceutical company. German immigrant founders, respectable but minor. The war changed everything. Penicillin was discovered by Alexander Fleming in 1928, but mass production was impossible. The fermentation process was complex, expensive, unreliable. When World War II started, soldiers were dying from infections. The military needed antibiotics desperately. The government launched a massive program to industrialize penicillin production. They approached pharmaceutical companies. Merck, Pfizer, Squibb. Cost plus contracts for whoever could scale production. Merck won the largest contracts. Government paid for research, factory construction equipment. Merck managed operations. By 1945, Merck was producing 650 billion units of penicillin per month. The government bought everything, cost plus, guaranteed profit. But here's where Merck's genius emerged, and negotiated patent rights. The fermentation process they developed using government money became Merck intellectual property. After the war, when penicillin went commercial, Merck owned the production patents. Competitors had to license from them or develop inferior alternatives. This model, government-funded research converted to private patents, became pharmaceutical industry standard. Taxpayers pay for discovery and development. Corporations own the results. Charge whatever they want. It's the most profitable arrangement in modern capitalism. It was perfected during World War II. Merck's revenue went from $15 million in 1940 to $150 million in 1945, 10 times growth in 5 years, all from government contracts. After the war, they kept growing. Antibiotics, vaccines, chronic disease treatments. By 2000, Merck was worth $200 billion. Today, after mergers and spin-offs, descendants of Merck are worth even more. The Merck family fortune is in the billions. Multiple generations of wealth from one insight. War requires medicine. Government will pay anything. And the patents you develop during war can be monetized forever after. Now let's talk about the most important mechanism created during World War II. The one that enabled all this profit. It's the one that still exists today, bigger than ever. It's the federal budget. Before World War II, the federal government spent $9 billion per year. That's total spending. Military, civilian, everything. By 1945, the government was spending $93 billion per year. 10 times increase in 6 years. Where did the money come from? They printed it. The Federal Reserve expanded the money supply massively, but more importantly, they borrowed it. War bonds. The government sold debt to citizens, to banks, to corporations. $185 billion in debt accumulated during the war. That's $3 trillion in today's money. This established the precedent. Deficit spending is acceptable during crisis, and war is permanent crisis. After World War II, military spending never returned to pre-war levels. In 1948, 3 years after the war ended, military spending was still $10 billion per year, higher than the entire federal budget before the war. Why? Because the military-industrial complex was now embedded. Boeing, Lockheed, GM, DuPont. Thousands of others were dependent on military contracts. If spending dropped, they'd collapse. So spending didn't drop. It became permanent. The Cold War provided justification. Soviet threat, nuclear arms race, global commitments. The corporations built during World War II required feeding. And the government, which had learned it could print and borrow unlimited money, kept feeding them. This is the system we live in today. $850 billion in annual military spending, not because threats require it, because the corporations built in 1940 require it. It must be kept profitable, must be kept operational, must be kept politically powerful, because they own the politicians. They fund the campaigns. They employ the constituents. World War II didn't just create billionaires. It created a permanent structure where billionaires are guaranteed, where profit is extracted from taxpayers through government spending, where military budget is corporate welfare, and where the wealth accumulated in 1945 compounds forever. Let me show you how this wealth concentrates across generations. The fortunes built during World War II didn't dissipate. They grew. Prescott Bush's descendants became presidents. The DuPont family spread across dozens of billionaires. Hughes Aircraft became Raytheon, which pays executives $20 million annually. Merck's pharmaceutical model made Pfizer, J&J, all the others. Boeing and Lockheed Martin CEOs earn hundreds of millions in stock options, but the real wealth isn't visible. It's not the CEOs, it's the shareholders. The institutional investors, BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, they own the defense contractors. They own the pharmaceutical companies. They own the aerospace corporations. And they collect dividends every quarter, funded by military spending, by government contracts, by cost-plus arrangements. This is the final evolution of the World War II profit model. The wealth doesn't stay with individuals anymore. It's managed by asset managers. Trillions in funds controlled by a few hundred people. And those funds own everything built during the war. Raytheon, Lockheed, Boeing, Pfizer, all of them. Every defense dollar, every pharmaceutical dollar, eventually flows to BlackRock and Vanguard shareholders. Who are the shareholders? Pension funds, university endowments, billionaire family offices, the wealth compounds. Generation after generation. The money extracted from taxpayers in 1945 is still growing, still concentrating, still protected by the same structures established then. And here's what nobody explains. This isn't capitalism. Capitalism requires competition, risk, profit, and loss. What we have is guaranteed extraction. Corporations that cannot fail because they're partnered with government. Industries that exist only because of government spending. Wealth that accumulates not from innovation, but from contracts. This system was created during World War II. 6 years of total war required total government control of economy. Costs plus contracts, guaranteed profits, corporate consolidation, military dependence, all of it emerged from emergency. But it never ended. The emergency became permanent. The war economy became the economy. And the men who positioned themselves in 1939, who secured the first contracts, who understood government spending would never stop, they became billionaires. Their grandchildren are billionaires. Their great-grandchildren will be billionaires. Because the system doesn't just create wealth, it protects it, grows it, makes it permanent. This is why billionaires exist. Not because they're smarter, not because they innovate. Because a system was built during World War II that guarantees wealth extraction. Wow. And that system never stopped. Expanded. Defense spending led to aerospace industry. Aerospace led to technology. Technology led to surveillance. Surveillance led to data monopolies. It's each evolution more profitable than the last. But it all traces back to 1939. 2 cost plus contracts. You cannot become a billionaire without this system. You cannot maintain $1 billion without it. The market doesn't create that much wealth. Only government spending does. Only guaranteed extraction does. And World War II taught corporations exactly how to do it. Partner with government, secure contracts, eliminate competition through scale, profit forever. The war ended in 1945, 80 years ago. But the wealth it created is still here, still growing, still concentrated in fewer hands. The children of World War II profiteers are running the world. Not through conspiracy, through structure, through systems built when everyone was focused on defeating fascism. And here's the final truth. World War II was sold as a fight for freedom, defeating tyranny, saving democracy. And maybe that's what it was for soldiers. But for corporations, for financiers, for the men who stayed home and built weapons, it was something else. It was the greatest profit opportunity in history. 50 million dead. 6 years of destruction. And unlimited government spending with no accountability. They didn't waste it. They built empires. And we're still living in them. Still funding them. Still unable to escape them. Because the system isn't military-industrial complex. The system is guaranteed billionaire creation through government spending. That's what World War II taught. And that's what we've been doing ever since. If this showed you that modern wealth isn't created in garages, isn't built by innovation, but extracted through government relationships perfected 80 years ago, you're starting to see how power actually works. The billionaires aren't entrepreneurs. They're descendants of war profiteers. The system isn't free market. It's a permanent war economy, and you're funding it. Every tax dollar, every deficit, every military budget. World War II created modern billionaires. Not by accident, by design. And the design is still running, still extracting, though concentrating wealth at the top, while everyone else wonders why they can't get ahead. Now you know. Oh. The war never ended. It just became the economy, and the profiteers won. Here's what I want to know. Do you think this system can ever be reformed? Or is it too embedded, too powerful, too protected to ever change? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because I want to know if you see a way out, or if we all just living inside a machine built 80 years ago that we QN'd escape. If this changed how you see where billionaire wealth actually comes from, hit subscribe. Because they are not going to teach you in school that World War II was unjust won on battlefields. It was won in boardrooms by men who turned death into dividends and built a system that's still running today. And if you want to understand the other half of this equation, if you want to know how government debt works, and who actually profits when every country on Earth owes trillions, click the video on your screen right now. If all countries are in debt, who actually owns the debt? Because the war profiteers and the debt holders, they're the same people. And once you see both systems, you'll understand exactly how the trap was built and why you're caught inside it.